The Stranger in the Sands. The Nevada sun blazed mercilessly overhead as Jake Martinez guided his old pickup truck along the dusty ranch road. Sweat dripped down his weathered face as he squinted through the cracked windshield. At 28, Jake had spent most of his adult life working the remote cattle ranch, far from civilization and exactly how he liked it. People complicated things. Animals were honest. An impossible discovery. A glint of metal caught his eye near Devil's Ridge. Jake slowed the truck, curiosity overriding caution. What he found defied explanation. A sleek silver craft partially buried in the sand, unlike anything from Earth. The metal seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and strange symbols covered its surface. A soft moan drew his attention. Behind the craft, a figure lay crumpled against a boulder. Jake's breath caught. The being was clearly not human, yet hauntingly beautiful. Her skin held a subtle blue tint that sparkled like starlight, and her hair flowed like liquid silver. She wore a torn garment that seemed woven from moonbeams themselves. The language of compassion. "Hey there," Jake whispered, approaching slowly with his hands visible. The alien woman's eyes snapped open, large luminous orbs that shifted between purple and gold. Fear flickered across her delicate features as she tried to scramble backward. "Easy, easy," Jake murmured in the same tone he used with spooked horses. He noticed the deep gash along her arm, blue-silver blood seeping through her fingers. Without thinking, he pulled out his first aid kit. The alien woman watched warily as Jake gestured to her wound, then to the bandages. Understanding dawned in those remarkable eyes. She extended her injured arm with trembling grace. As Jake carefully cleaned and bandaged the wound, he noticed her watching his every movement. Her touch was warm, surprisingly human-like despite the alien beauty. When their eyes met, something passed between them, a recognition that transcended species. "Jake," he said softly, pointing to himself. "Jake." She tilted her head, those mesmerizing eyes studying him. Then, with a voice like wind chimes, she whispered, "Zara." A dangerous decision. The distant rumble of engines made them both freeze. Black vehicles appeared on the horizon, moving fast across the desert. Zara's eyes widened with terror, and she grabbed Jake's arm with desperate strength. "Please," she whispered in accented English that surprised him. "Hide me." Jake looked into those pleading eyes and made a choice that would change everything. "My truck, now!" As they raced toward his remote cabin, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet life had just exploded into something far more dangerous and far more meaningful than he ever imagined. The mysterious woman beside him held secrets that could reshape his understanding of the universe.
Breaking barriers. Sanctuary in the wilderness. Jake's cabin sat hidden among the red rocks like a secret carved from the desert itself. As he helped Zara from the truck, she gazed in wonder at the simple wooden structure that would become her refuge. Her movements were graceful despite her injury, like a dancer learning new steps on an unfamiliar stage. Inside, the cabin was sparse but clean, a single room with a bed, kitchen area, and stone fireplace. Jake gestured for Zara to sit while he gathered supplies. The awkward silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions and careful glances. Finding common ground. "Water?" Jake offered, holding up a glass. Zara nodded, accepting it with both hands in what seemed like a gesture of respect. As she drank, Jake noticed the elegant way she held herself, as if every movement carried centuries of refinement. Communication proved challenging, but not impossible. When Zara winced from her wound, Jake sketched a simple face with a frown. She understood immediately, responding with fluid gestures that painted pictures in the air. Her hands moved like birds, telling stories Jake was beginning to read. She pointed to herself, then swept her arms wide, indicating vast distances. Her expression grew sad as she touched her heart, then pushed her hands away, running from something or someone. Secrets revealed. Over the following days, their silent conversations deepened. Using Jake's old notebooks, Zara began drawing her world. She sketched towering crystal cities beneath twin moons, beings that looked like her moving through gardens of impossible beauty. But her drawings also showed darker images, stern figures in elaborate robes, chains, tears streaming down faces that looked like hers. Jake found himself spending hours watching her delicate fingers create these glimpses of another world. Sometimes their hands would brush as he pointed to details, asking wordless questions. Each touch sent electricity through him that had nothing to do with alien technology. The language of hearts. On the third evening, as desert stars painted the sky silver, Zara spoke her first full sentence in English. "Jake, kind man." Her voice carried melodies that earthly languages couldn't capture, but the emotion was universal. "Zara, beautiful woman," he replied softly, surprised by his boldness. A flush of deeper blue colored her cheeks, and she looked away with something that might have been shyness. That night, she drew two figures sitting by a fire, one clearly human, one clearly not, but their hands were touching. Jake understood. Despite everything that separated them, something was growing between them that defied explanation. Growing attraction. Days blended into a rhythm of careful discovery. Jake taught Zara about Earth customs, showing her how to work his simple radio, how to cook eggs, how to braid rope. She learned eagerly, her intelligence obvious in how quickly she grasped new concepts. In return, she shared fragments of her culture. She hummed haunting melodies that made Jake's heart ache with longing for places he'd never seen. She showed him meditation techniques that seemed to slow time itself. Most remarkably, she began teaching him her language, not just words, but the music behind them. Dangerous feelings. "My people," Zara said one evening, her English improving daily. "They want me marry man I not love. Important for politics." She struggled with the words, but her pain was clear. "So you ran," Jake said gently. It wasn't a question. Zara nodded, tears glistening like liquid starlight. "I choose freedom. Choose heart." She looked at him with those incredible eyes, and Jake felt the last of his defenses crumble. That evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the desert gold and crimson, Zara reached for his hand. Her touch was warm, electric, perfect. Neither spoke, but both understood. They were no longer just alien and human helping each other survive. They were becoming something far more dangerous and wonderful. In the distance, dust clouds gathered on the horizon. Time was running out for their peaceful sanctuary, but in this moment, Jake couldn't bring himself to care about anything beyond the miracle of Zara's hand in his.
Shadows on the horizon. The peaceful morning shattered when Zara suddenly stiffened, her head tilted like an animal sensing danger. Through the cabin window, Jake saw nothing but empty desert, but Zara's fear was palpable. "They come," she whispered, her improving English strained with terror. "My father's hunters, they find me." Jake grabbed his binoculars and scanned the desert. 3 sleek vehicles moved across the landscape like predators, their designs clearly not of this world. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the cabin. "How long do we have?" Jake asked, already moving to gather supplies. "Minutes," Zara replied, her face pale with dread. "They have, how you say, tracking device from my blood." Escape into the wasteland. Jake's mind raced through options. The truck would be too slow, too visible. But he knew these canyons better than anyone.
He grabbed a backpack, stuffing it with water, food, and basic supplies. "Can you climb?" he asked. Zara nodded, determination replacing fear in those luminous eyes. They slipped out the back as the alien vehicles surrounded the cabin. Jake led Zara up a narrow path he'd used since childhood, climbing toward the hidden caves in Devil's Ridge. Behind them, voices called out in Zara's musical language, but the tone was harsh, commanding. The climb was treacherous, especially with Zara still recovering from her injuries, but she followed Jake with surprising agility, her alien grace adapting to the rocky terrain. When she stumbled, Jake was there to steady her, and each touch seemed to strengthen the bond growing between them. Refuge in stone. The cave Jake chose was barely visible from below, hidden behind a curtain of desert brush. Inside, it opened into a natural chamber where ancient peoples had once sheltered. Jake had discovered it as a boy and never told another soul. They huddled in the darkness as searchlights swept the canyon below. Zara pressed close to Jake, her warmth a comfort against the cool cave air. Her alien scent was like flowers that bloomed only under starlight, intoxicating and strange. "Tell me about them. The hunters." Zara's voice was barely audible. "Elite guard of my father's house. They never stop, never fail. I am, how you say, precious commodity. My marriage will unite two royal houses, bring peace to warring worlds." "And what do you want?" he asked, though he feared the answer. Zara turned to him in the darkness, her eyes catching the faint moonlight that filtered through the cave opening. "I want to choose my heart," she said simply. "I want freedom to love who I love." The weight of her words hung between them. Jake understood the magnitude of what she was saying. She was choosing an uncertain life with him over the security and duty of her royal birth. "Zara?" he began, but she placed a finger gently on his lips. "In our world, we have saying, heart knows no borders, no species, no duty, only truth." Under the vast desert sky visible through the cave opening, with danger hunting them and their future uncertain, Jake and Zara found themselves drawn together by forces stronger than fear. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, like two different species learning a universal language. When they broke apart, Zara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Now I know why I ran. Not from duty. Toward this. Toward you." The hunt intensifies. A sound outside made them freeze, the scrape of boots on stone. The hunters had found the cave entrance. Jake's hand moved to the hunting knife on his belt, but Zara shook her head. "There is another way," she breathed. "Trust me." She pressed her hands against the cave wall and whispered words in her own language. To Jake's amazement, the stone seemed to respond, a hidden passage opening where none had existed before. As they crawled through the narrow tunnel, leaving their pursuers behind them in the empty cave, Jake realized his life had become something beyond his wildest dreams. He was falling in love with a woman from the stars, and she was choosing him over an empire. The passage led deeper into the mountain, toward whatever destiny awaited them in the heart of the desert night.
Sanctuary in the Deep. The hidden passage led to a vast underground chamber that took Jake's breath away. Ancient crystals embedded in the walls cast a soft, ethereal glow, creating a cathedral of living light. Water trickled from somewhere deep in the mountain, forming a crystal-clear pool that reflected the luminous walls like captured starlight. "How did you know?" Jake whispered, awestruck by the impossible beauty surrounding them. Zara smiled, the first truly peaceful expression he'd seen on her face since they met. "My people, we feel the spirit of stone. This place, it calls to those who seek sanctuary. She moved gracefully to the water's edge, cupping the clear liquid in her palms. Here, we are safe. Confessions under crystal light. They made camp beside the glowing pool, sharing the simple food Jake had packed. In the magical light of the crystals, Zara looked like a vision from a dream, beautiful and otherworldly, yet achingly real as she sat close enough for him to feel her warmth. Tell me about your world, the real story. Jake was quiet for a long moment, trailing her fingers in the luminous water. I am Princess of Androsia Prime. My father rules 3 star systems. For 25 Earth years, I study, I learn languages. I prepare to be, how you say, political tool. She looked up at Jake with those mesmerizing eyes. But I dream of choice. I dream of love that is not arranged by councils and treaties. Her voice grew soft. I dream of someone who sees me, not my bloodline. Barriers fall away. I see you, Jake said simply, reaching out to touch her face. Her skin was warm silk beneath his calloused fingers. Not a princess, not an alien, just Zara, the most beautiful woman I've ever known. Something shifted in her expression, walls crumbling, defenses falling away. Jake, she whispered, leaning into his touch, I have never felt this. In all my worlds, all my studies of alien cultures, nothing prepared me for you. Their second kiss was deeper than the first, filled with the desperation of 2 people who'd found something precious in the most impossible circumstances. When they parted, both were breathing hard, hearts racing with more than just attraction, with the recognition of a bond that transcended every barrier between them. Love blooms in starlight. That night, beside the glowing pool with crystal light painting them both in shades of magic, Jake and Zara gave themselves to each other completely. Their lovemaking was tender and fierce, gentle and passionate, 2 lonely souls finding home in each other's arms. Afterwards, they lay entwined on Jake's sleeping bag, Zara's head on his chest as he stroked her silver hair. The crystals above seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat, blessing their union. My people will call this forbidden, Zara murmured against his skin. Interspecies bonding is complicated in royal families. Then we won't tell them we're bonded. We'll just love each other and let the universe figure out the details. Zara lifted her head to look at him, tears of joy glistening in those incredible eyes. In my language, we have word shartai. It means soulmate across stars. I think perhaps you are mine. Plans and promises. As dawn approached somewhere far above them, they talked in whispers about impossible dreams that suddenly seemed possible. Zara described worlds where different species lived in harmony, where love was celebrated regardless of origin. Jake painted pictures with words of a life they could build together. Maybe here on Earth, maybe among the stars, maybe somewhere entirely new. We could travel, Zara said, excitement growing in her voice. I have resources, hidden from my father. We could explore worlds where no one knows who I am supposed to be. Jake smiled, amazed at how quickly his simple life had expanded to encompass entire galaxies. As long as we're together, I don't care if it's here or Alpha Centauri. But even as they planned their future, both knew the hunters wouldn't give up easily. Royal daughters didn't simply disappear without consequences. Their love story was just beginning, and already it was written in starlight and sealed with the promise of a bond that would challenge everything both their worlds believed about love, duty, and the space between stars. The crystal chamber held their secrets safe for one perfect night, but morning would bring new choices and greater dangers than either could yet imagine.
Dawn of Reckoning. The crystal chamber's peaceful glow couldn't last forever. On their second morning in the underground sanctuary, The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the hidden passages. Zara's eyes snapped open, her alien senses detecting what Jake couldn't yet hear. "They found us," she whispered, but there was no fear in her voice now, only determination. The woman who had run scared through the desert was gone, replaced by someone who had found something worth fighting for. Jake reached for his knife, but Zara caught his hand. "No violence," she said firmly. "There is another way." She stood gracefully, her torn dress somehow transformed into regal bearing. "It is time I face them as who I truly am." Royal confrontation. 3 figures emerged from the passage, tall, elegant beings that shared Zara's ethereal beauty, but carried themselves with cold authority. Their leader wore robes that seemed woven from midnight itself, and his eyes held the weight of centuries. "Daughter," he said, in accented English, his voice carrying both love and disappointment. "You have led us across half the galaxy on this foolish quest." "Father," Zara stepped forward, her chin raised in defiance Jake had come to know well, "I have found what I was truly seeking." The alien king's gaze shifted to Jake, and those ancient eyes seemed to see straight through to his soul. "This primitive being? You would cast aside your duty for this?" "Love's true test." Jake started to speak, but Zara raised her hand. This was her battle to fight. "This primitive being showed me kindness when I was wounded and lost. He protected me when your hunters pursued me. He loves me for who I am, not what I represent." "Love," her father scoffed, "a luxury that royalty cannot afford. Your marriage to Prince Kael will unite our houses, prevent a war that could destroy millions." Jake watched the pain flicker across Zara's face, understanding the impossible weight she carried. But when she looked at him, her resolve strengthened. "Then find another way to make peace," she said simply. "I choose love." An unexpected alliance. What happened next surprised everyone. Jake stepped forward, meeting the alien king's intimidating gaze without flinching. "Your Majesty," he said, somehow knowing the proper address. "I'm just a simple rancher, but I know something about protecting what matters." He gestured to the crystal chamber around them. "Your daughter didn't just run away. She led us here to a place of power and sanctuary. She's not weak or foolish. She's the strongest person I've ever met." The king studied Jake with new interest. "You would defend her against her own people?" "I'd defend her against the universe if I had to," Jake replied without hesitation. "But I'd rather find a way we can all live with." Love's transcendent. Something shifted in the alien king's expression. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw not a rebellious child, but a woman who had found her strength. "You truly love him?" he asked quietly. "With all my hearts," Zara replied, using the plural that reminded Jake of just how different her physiology was, yet how universal her emotions. The king was quiet for a long moment, the crystal chamber holding its breath. Finally he spoke. "Prince Kael seeks power, not peace. Perhaps—" He paused, studying Jake again. "Perhaps it is time for new alliances, new ways of thinking." A future written in stars. 1 year later, Jake stood on the observation deck of an Androsian diplomatic vessel, watching Earth turn slowly beneath twin moons that had been moved into orbit as a wedding gift. The sight still amazed him. His simple world had become the center of the first interspecies embassy in galactic history. "Admiring your handiwork?" Zara asked, joining him at the viewing port. She wore robes that blended Earth and Anderson fashion, her new role as cultural ambassador suiting her perfectly. "Our handiwork," Jake corrected, wrapping his arms around his wife. "I still can't believe your father made me an official Earth representative." Zara laughed, the sound like music among the stars. "He said anyone brave enough to fall in love with an alien princess and stubborn enough to make it work deserved a title." Love's legacy. Below them, the lights of New Harmony gleamed, the first truly integrated human-alien settlement, where their love story had become the foundation for something larger than either had dreamed. Children played in gardens where Earth flowers bloomed alongside alien crystals, and the future seemed limitless. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked softly. "Giving up your old life?" Zara turned in his arms, those incredible eyes still able to stop his heart after all this time. "I didn't give up my life," she said, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "I found it." As their lips met under the light of alien stars, Jake marveled at how a chance encounter in the Nevada desert had become a love story written across the cosmos. Sometimes the most impossible dreams were just waiting for someone brave enough to believe in them. Their love had changed everything, not just for them, but for two worlds learning that the space between hearts was smaller than the distance between stars. The end.